So, first, what is the World Solar Challenge? Obviously, this is the Solar Car Challenge, High School Solar Car Challenge. But World Solar Challenge, it's a 3,000 kilometer competition. It's from Darwin to Adelaide. Darwin's in the north, Adelaide's in the south. And so when you drive, similar to how it was this past summer, hours a little bit different, but you can drive from 8 a.m. To 5 p.m. And then there's 9 control points along the route. At those control points, you stop for half an hour. You're able to gas up your internal combustion vehicles. That can be an issue. It's very remote. Out on and Stewart Highway is the road in the Outback. And then at the end of the night, you just camp on the side of the road. You have a 10-minute period to pull over and find a nice spot to camp. And that does mean there is no bathroom, so that can be a challenge. So Doc kind of asked to tell a story about Australia. Oh, there we go. Still getting used to this, all right. And where it all started was we airshipped our car to Australia. So it shipped about August 15th of last year, 2023. And we also have a shipping container, and I'll show some photos of that too, and that's kind of our mobile workspace. And we sent a lot of our tools and equipment, but we wanted to be hands-on with the car as long as possible, so we do airship it. And so you kind of say a prayer and you hope, and 10 days later it showed up. So that was good. We were feeling good, and we timed that, so we arrived a couple days before, and the car and air crate arrived, and that was awesome. So we started in Adelaide, and that is kind of the finish line of the race. It's in South Australia, and we had a little bit of work to do. We might have shipped a car that wasn't quite ready to compete, and I'm sure no one here would ever do that with Solar Car Challenge. But there were 21 students, and here's our car, Astrum, my baby, I guess. It's an awesome car. I kind of dive into some stats on this real quick. So as designed, it had a CDA, which is the coefficient of drag times the frontal area of 0.059. These stats too, like normally we wouldn't share like before race, but now afterwards, and it's kind of interesting and something too, if as you design and build your vehicles, kind of maybe a great baseline or something, to put up stats like this, you've certainly built a great car. The weight was 162.3, that's kilograms, not pounds. That would be pretty awesome if we were 162 pounds, but we're not quite there yet. At the World Solar Challenge, you're limited based on battery mass. So we had a 20 kilogram battery, and that's 20 kilograms of cells, and that was about 8 kilowatt hours. So that's a little bit more than the Solar Car Challenge, but not so far off. The tires we use, they're Bridgestone and Lighton, and Bridgestone's a big sponsor of the event. And for those teams out there, kind of a hat tip, these tires are magic. In terms of rolling resistance, it's really phenomenal. Compared to a regular road-going tire, it's like 1/10 the rolling resistance. So if you're looking for a performance upgrade, tires, awesome. They can be a little hard to source, and they're expensive, but the performance, there's performance there. Solar array, teams are limited to 4 meters squared of silicon solar cells, and so we use Maxion SunPower cells. A lot of teams here use those as well. And we used Mito encapsulant. That's the top sheet, and you can kind of see it's that prismatic. It looks like a rainbow in certain pictures, which can be pretty cool. Just kind of a baseline too at 80 kilometers an hour, and that's what we ended up averaging over the race. I think it was a little bit less, like 79 point something. We consumed somewhere around 700 watts. And the body and construction, it was all pre-preg carbon fiber. There was Nomex honeycomb, and there was also a foam core, row cell, and a titanium roll cage. So also, there's a couple carbon fiber cars in Solar Car Challenge, and pre-preg is sort of the ultimatum of materials. And it's pre-impregnated with the resin, so you get that just perfect resin to fiber ratio. So if you guys are looking out and really want to push the limits on building the best car possible, pre-preg is a great place to start. It's expensive, it's complicated, and I just share this too to kind of show what our vehicle looks like and some of the technologies. It's also fun to show off a little bit, if I'm going to be honest. So, before I dive more into the Australia adventure, how do we design our vehicles from a very broad level? And what we do is we're focused on race time, and race time's like the end all be all, and for us, we know it's going to be somewhere around a 40-hour race from Darwin to Adelaide, and hopefully a little bit quicker. So as we make our decisions, we're always trying to optimize for the lowest race time possible. And same thing here for the teams. That's something you could do, and instead of maybe race times, it could be laps. And how do we get the most laps possible? So to give an example, and that might be a little confusing, might be array versus aerodynamics. You can see. I'll go back here. The array has a curvature, and there's a canopy sticking up in the middle. And a lot of cars at the Solar Car Challenge have just a flat overhead panel. And there's some disadvantages to when you do it like this. You get shading at the start and ends of the day because that canopy, is actually going to cause shading onto your solar cells, and that's going to reduce your power. The other thing is that curvature too. Perfectly. When it's curved, you're going to collect a little bit less energy because you can imagine the cells aren't quite as perpendicular to the sun at certain times of the day. So we'll run sort of what would be called like engineering trade-off analysis and determine what's going to have the lowest race time. If we curve the array, we found through our aerodynamic simulations it would make our vehicle more aerodynamic, have a lower coefficient of drag, lower frontal area, but it would hurt our array. So there's kind of a back and forth there in determining the optimal solution. Another thing that we do that is interesting is we convert things into race time per dollar. So there might be a conversation on your team this year, well, we could either purchase more expensive solar cells, or maybe we could get a new battery. And the solar cells are going to be this much more efficient, and the battery might be this much lighter. So we'll actually convert that into a dollar unit and determine, we have X amount of money to spend. What's going to get us the lowest race time? And this is a really great way, and at least I think, to design your vehicle and very quantitative. And it's all based in first principles analysis. The math we use normally isn't much more complex than like a high school physics class. So it's something everyone here certainly is capable of doing. And it results in a great vehicle. So back to the adventure. So we got to Adelaide. We had a little bit more work to do, but then we headed to the Outback. And you can see this. Excuse me. This year, we're set up our camp at the end of the night in Glendambo, and that's kind of an outpost in the Outback. And it's not like a regular interstate where every few miles you can pull off and stop for a hot meal and gas, and there's a hotel. It can be hours apart for places to stay and places to get gas. It's really just kind of stunning how open and beautiful it is. So those 10 days of testing, they were tough. We had some issues with the vehicle. There's team challenges. I'm sure everyone here is part of a team. It's not always happy-go-lucky. Sometimes folks can get frustrated with each other, and especially when you're in the Outback and there's bugs and heat and sweat, and maybe you haven't showered in a little too long. It can add to the tension. And the bugs were unbelievable. At night, when you turn on your lights and you are the only light for miles, the bugs love it, and they just swarm on the lights. And you see some bugs, you didn't know existed. It looks like a Jurassic Park movie, which is pretty exciting. So, kind of a couple more photos here of what it looks like in the Outback. It's just unbelievably, beautiful. It's endlessly open, and there's lots of wildlife. It can be dangerous too. These are called emus, kind of similar to a ostrich or something like you might see in the United States, but they're at the perfect height for when you're driving, if you were to hit it in a sedan at windshield height. So you have to be really careful. I'm driving on the Stewart Highway, and it's not recommended to drive at night or around dusk or dawn because the heat of the road attracts the animals. So we went on this great testing campaign. We found, unfortunately, some problems with the vehicle. We were able to repair those, and we arrived in Darwin. And to make things a little more exciting, Darwin is the start of the race. That's also where static and dynamic scrutineering takes place. This picture here is at Hidden Valley Motorsports Complex. It's where they do the dynamic scrutineering, and it's also where you do the hot lap. And the hot lap determines the starting order. So the vehicle that completes the hot lap first gets to start first, and the vehicle that completes the hot lap the slowest, foreshadowing here, is unable to complete the hot lap, starts last. And it's not delta time, so they start about 1 minute apart. So say if you are the 10th team to start, you would start at approximately 8:10, and you would just lose those 10 minutes to the team that started first. So we got to Darwin. It was super exciting. We passed our static scrutineering. We got to the hot lap. The hot lap is the day before the race, and there's all this energy. Everyone is just, absolutely stoked. It's, all the teams are out there. The cars are looking beautiful. It's a great day, and we're going to determine the starting order. So unfortunately for us, we go out there and you're able to do one warm-up lap and you begin that lap, and we're super excited. The vehicle looks great. The day before we had had a great testing session, and there's a little bit of an incline to the track. So we're going up that little bit of incline, getting ready to begin the hot lap, and all of a sudden we hear over the radio, there's no power. And I think, as solar car folks, we've all heard that message over the radio before. There's no power, something's wrong. And, I was in the control tower, and all of a sudden my heart just drops. And we went through a little bit of debugging, and we figured out, we were going to have to come in. The vehicle wasn't going to be able to complete the hot lap. So this was the team. No one was feeling particularly good in that second. And we didn't know it at the time, but, later we were told we wouldn't be able to redo the hot lap, so we were going to start in last place. And that was really disappointing for us, and we had worked so hard, and there had been all this energy, and we'd been so excited. And so we said, okay, that's okay, we understand this, but we don't want to give up. Could we just do one lap for the team, kind of rebuild that energy and get the experience of doing the hot lap? And so, other teams came out to cheer us on, and we're getting excited and everything. We have that energy again, and we know we're kind of qualified in last, and we're going up this hill again, and all of a sudden, over the radio, there's no power. So that was frustrating, We felt we had worked so hard. We had built this beautiful car. We had these dreams, and we knew we could be competitive. We thought maybe we had a shot to maybe we had a shot to win. And now we were going to start in last, and we didn't know what was wrong with the vehicle. We didn't know if it was going to start. We didn't know when we got to the start line if the car was going to go. And that was that's real life. That's solar car. But things looked up for us, and that first day was just absolutely beautiful. And as you're leaving Darwin, there were a little bit of wildfires, which made things exciting. But so there were 38 teams who made it to Darwin, 32 qualified. So we started in dead last. We started 41 minutes behind the first place car. And not only did we start 40 minutes behind the first place car, but it takes additional energy to overtake these vehicles. But we went from 32nd to 6th place. And, just that feeling on that first day and all that hard work, it was so validating. And you never know, you feel like you've poured your heart and soul into this vehicle, but, the other vehicles look just as awesome. How is this thing really going to perform? Have we just spent all this time only to, drive a couple hundred meters and not do it? But, that first day really made it all worth it. And things sort of just kept on getting better. At the end of the second day, we were right behind a team called Tokai, and that still in 6th place, but we had closed even more gap. And then on that third day, things were looking up, and we passed 2 cars. It was Tokai and Sonnenwagen, and to be honest, I kind of had tears in my eyes, and knowing I was so proud in the team and what we had come and how far we had come and the challenges we had to beat to get there. It was just incredible. And we were never overtaken during the race, which was good. That was really great for team morale, especially after that awful day where we couldn't even perform. We couldn't even drive one lap. One thing too, sometimes I get asked, well, what did you do on race? And there's lots of roles, and kind of my role during the day was more or less to sleep. During control stops, I had some responsibilities, but at night it was my responsibility to ensure, tents were getting set up, food was being prepared, and the overarching thing is that the vehicle will be ready to go for the next day. And we're perform extremely rigorous checks and replace tires to ensure that when we're on the road, we're using every single second and we're not, on the side of the road trying to repair something. So you can see this picture here. I don't know if you can see because of the sun, but that's time dated at 1:50 in the morning. And we were lucky enough on the third night to have ended at a small, roadhouse. So we were using the lights of the gas station to push the vehicle back and forth, and we were listening for any sounds of scrub, ensuring our fenders or brakes, everything was rolling smoothly. And it was hard because for me, I had to stay up all night. I also had to get up early in the morning. I had to wake up at 5 every morning to point the solar array to ensure we were collecting as much energy as possible. So this, kind of all culminated after 4.5 days with with fourth place in the world. And that was just incredible. The feeling with the team to have come so far and to have built this vehicle and, to have gone to Australia and to have crossed the continent. Only 12 teams managed to complete the World Solar Challenge. There were 38 who made it to Darwin, 32 who started, and only 12 who finished. And, to finish fourth, it was just, the most incredible feeling in the world. So kind of some lessons from this. It's not always glorious. For every solar car driver, there's lots of other responsibilities. And, one responsibility for us was we had a vehicle up ahead to remove road debris, and sometimes that included roadkill. For everyone who gets to design the suspension, there's someone who has to design the ramp to get the car in and out of the trailer. It's, solar car, it's not always glorious, and it's probably almost always not glorious. It's not always easy. That time with the hot lap, there were team tensions throughout where folks would get frustrated with one another. Everyone had to make lots of sacrifices, and whether that was, classes having to decide whether to put time into, time in the car and on the team or into classes, friends, lots of people would say, what are you doing spending all this time on this crazy project? Don't you want to hang out and go to the football game or whatever it may be? There's a lot of sacrifices involved with being a part of something like this. And it's not always fun. Passing teams during the race was incredible. It felt so good. It felt like all that work was validating. But some days I had to be the one to clean up for the team after dinner. Someone has to review the data. There's conflict. A lot of the times, solar car, it might not always be fun, but it's so worth it. I've made so many friends through solar car. Pretty much all of my jobs I've earned through solar car or talking about solar car, on my resume or during a job interview. I've gotten to do some awesome travel. So it might not always be glorious, fun, or easy, but it's so worth it. So that's that. If anyone has any questions, yep. Yeah, so the day before when we had been practicing for the hot lap, we had been fiddling around with some settings, and this is a good lesson to all teams where once you get close to competition, sometimes it's best just to let the car be, and even if you think you can make it a little bit better, just let it be. And when we had changed those settings, we ended up overheating that motor controller, and there were some internal safeguards that were no longer functional. I think, do you have a question back there? Oh, okay, I'll get it. Cool. Any other questions?
Will, thank you.
Yeah.